Just wait, we're just gonna, I think, Tom, I should hear myself. Okay. As I said, we're gonna be starting with the election of the chair. The way this works is that there will be a call for nominations 3 times. If the member of the commission who is nominated, I will ask if they want to let their name stand. If there are 2 or more nominations, there will be an election. Okay, so I am calling for nominations the first time. Director Newell.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Page.
Commissioner Page, you accept the nomination? Calling for nominations a second time. Calling for nominations a third time. Okay, hearing none. Thanks, Keith. You are chair of the Nelson District Recreation Commission for 2025.
Thank you, guys. Pissed off too many people this year.
Set the bar low and you can exceed it. So, if you will.
Thank you for those kind and wise, sage words, Director Newell.
Chair, I have to leave my ringer on low just because of something at home. So
Yeah. Okay, thank you, everybody. I will start us with our traditional land acknowledgement statement that we acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional land we are meeting today. With that, can I have someone move adoption of the agenda?
move.
Peyton Newell. Any objections? Seeing none. I want to recognize our representative from the Regional Sports Council. So if I could have a motion for freedom of the floor. Newell and Kate. And any objection? Seeing none. Welcome, Dave. And then we have receipt of the minutes. Do we have any conversations about the minutes? Just moving them? Kate?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are received. Don't really vote on that one. Delegates. We have Angus Glass from the Nelson Tennis Club here to present us with a verbal update on how tennis is doing and how the club is doing here in the city of Nelson.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for letting Nelson Tennis Club have some time on the agenda. I'll keep it very brief because I know you've got lots of business to get through, and I'd also like to thank Commissioner Page for reminding us that we've been on the agenda for a while, and if we don't come today, you might miss an opportunity for quite a while. So for those of you, I'm the president of the Nelson Tennis Club, and yes, we're flourishing, thriving. I'm very appreciative of that fact. For those of you who don't know our path, 2017, our courts were deteriorating up at Rosemont at the golf club there. We couldn't get a 10-year lease because the golf club, was potentially thinking about changing the usage of that area, using for housing or whatever the case is. So we went on the search for another home. Robbie Wright, who I'm sure you may remember, he went into this with Keith Bridger partnership with the school district. Abandoned courts up at LVR Courts, not used at all. So we went in with the partnership that we would provide the volunteer labour, the grant money, as long as they provide us access. So this is the way the partnership has developed over the years, that the school district gets a priority during school time for the court time. The community, the Nelson Tennis Club, gets priority for the court time outside of school time. It's been fantastic. It's meant that the courts are used pretty much most of the time, which is fantastic. And not without its challenges. Numbers have grown, and of course there's pressures on court time, but it's been very successful. We're now at the end. 2018 was the first time we used those new courts, but of course there's been ongoing development ever since then. Last year marked the 7th and final year of our capital improvements. It's been a long haul with many thousands of hours, and with that last year, I'd really like to note and appreciate the support of particularly Area F, and that has allowed us to finish the court lighting, but also areas E and the City of Nelson just this last year. So we've now got 4 courts lit that extends our playing time, not lighting the pickleball courts, just the tennis courts. So that's been a long road, and we're very pleased that we did it. So it's basically been a $1.7 million project that we've completed. Youth has been really central to what we do, obviously with the partnership with the school. So we've employed a part-time professional coach, Matt Martin. He's done a wonderful job. So just last year alone, we got the highest number of after-school program users. We've got the highest number of for the junior tournament. We've got the highest number for the junior development program. We've also started a high performance youth program as well. And not only that, talking about that partnership with the school, last year saw the highest number of students using the courts as well. So, and not just tennis, you associate pickleball perhaps with slightly older generations. The school has now started using the pickleball. It's quite funny to see the phys ed teacher roll up with his boom box and do a lesson with the students playing pickleball. But I won't call it an entry-level drug to tennis, but it's been very successful in that regard as well. So all in all, tennis players has gone up fourfold. It's also community. We allow community access. Obviously, that was part of the agreement with CBT for a small drop-in fee. But members, tennis player members, that's gone up nearly 5-fold since 2018 after being 3 or 4 years stagnant up at the old Rosemont courts. So that's been fantastic. Pickleball has grown 4-fold in the last 3 years alone, especially with the addition of the 4th pickleball court. So we feel that we really are providing a solid community service because there's been no other pickleball courts, purpose-built pickleball courts for the community, and you know the popularity of it as well. So all in all, yeah, good, and appreciative of the fact that where we are and with those challenges, we've got a good team leading it, but we will see how the years go on. And really, just to finish off, just like to mention the recreation campus, because the Nelson Tennis Club really doesn't have much skin in the game. We've got those courts, having indoor courts, we know it's a long shot. We would love to have some indoor courts, they would be well used. But we also recognise that many of the other sports activities in the community, they've either got very limited access or no access at all to their sport. So we appreciate kind of where we are. We love some indoor facilities, but we're saying the fact that, the Nelson Tennis Club has got no skin in the game. We've seen, I guess the message is all the sports communities, they rely on volunteers, and that has been key to having this success. But we need also the facilities for those volunteers to allow them to do their thing, and it can't be overstated how much of a benefit to the community, from economic to mental health to physical health to connections to leadership, all those great things that we know sports provides. We think that the recreation campus should stay as a recreation campus, a gem in the central community where many different sports, hopefully tennis, but we know it's a long shot, can have a home and really benefit to the community. So that's it from the tennis club. Hope it made sense, and thank you.
Go ahead, Noel.
Hi. Can't remember what was told to me about your asset management plan, like when you have to resurface the courts, and now that you've got such a membership and some cash flow. I just wondered if
I'm really pleased that you brought this up, because the partnership entails we look after the courts, all court services, multi-use. There's a basketball area, skateboard area, there is the tennis courts, there's the pickleball courts. And so the agreement is that we maintain and are responsible for the resurfacing. And resurfacing of the courts are extremely high. So basically, we've taken that on. And the monies that we collect from the season's passes and the membership fees and the drop-ins, we put aside. We've had a link with the school district as non-profit status, allowing those funds to come in there. And so, yeah, we're managing. So every year we put aside, can't remember the number exactly, $8,000 to $10,000 aside for that resurfacing, whether it be in 5 years' time, 8 years' time. It really depends on how they deteriorate. And they started to deteriorate. 2018 was the first year we started, so we're 6-7 years into it now this coming year.
Thank you.
Oh, and talking about accessibility, accessibility is really important. We dropped the fees in our first year up at the new courts. We dropped the fees in 2019. And then since then, for the last 6 years, including this coming years, all the fees remain the same since then. So we're really trying to keep it accessible to the community.
Okay, great. Dave?
You had mentioned in your presentation, again, thank you to you and your volunteers for putting this together and keeping momentum moving forward. You mentioned regional tournaments. Is there limits to provincial or national tournaments that you can host here with outdoor court space only, or would indoor court space support that?
Certainly, and so this is the Nelson Tennis Club, so it's not the pickleball club, and so we collect seasons passes from those people. But going back to pickleball, with the addition of the 4 courts, that we've been able to host tournaments. But yes, certainly there's limitations with the 4 courts that we have for tennis to host tournaments and have that year-round professional development as well. And so, and tournaments are a fantastic economic booster to the community. Those, so we've hosted cross Kootenay tournaments this year, but we aren't really able to host any kind of broader tournaments yet. We have the open tournament, and we'll have people from Calgary, Kelowna coming, but in terms of, we can't really do much more than that.
So would indoor space assist?
Indoor space would assist in terms of year-round play, but again, I know for tennis it's a long shot.
Go ahead, Dave.
Through the chair, thanks. Is there any thought or way to use the current space and cover it to make it indoor?
Again, it would be hugely expensive putting a bubble in. If you can imagine the courts and then there's a drop off to the school, a bubble entails putting cement foundation around the sides to stabilize the bubble. And so on that downward slope, you really have severe limitations of putting any concrete foundation down there. We're on as many places in Nelson, it really is not very feasible. We've looked at having the sports field, and of course it's owned by the school district. The sports field there at the back, that would be another nice indoor facility opportunity, but we don't think it's going to happen. But no, in terms of building a bubble, it is, we've looked into the costs, and it is fairly prohibitive.
Like the same prohibitive as building a whole entire new one, but more so because of the slope. Sorry.
Yeah, the slope does impact, and there's the fireway laneway that goes down that needs access to those fields at the back there. And of course, the newest development is the land swap that's just happening above the LVR courts. So that will be developed into private housing.
With access to the room.
With access, no, as I understand it, there won't be access going up Cottonwood Street. It will be through Trevor Street at the top.
There will be access to the street. We just don't know exactly where yet.
Exactly.
Like other people have a footpath.
Oh, footpath, yes, access, but not road through.
Yeah, no, okay. Definitely footpath. Other.
you so much for coming. It was great to have an update and hear how you guys have done your collaboration and where you guys are as far as a club and maintenance, and your feelings on what we can be doing elsewhere within the city and all that planning that goes into that. That's certainly well heard at this table of recreation, where we weigh that as commissioners on a daily basis. And so we certainly appreciate that heartfelt feedback. Thank you so much. And maybe in 2 years, we'll see you again, because that seems to be the cycle we're on. So it's wonderful to have one more club here and it's an update. Go ahead.
To you, Chair, and maybe to staff. It's so interesting, this process now that I've been in for 2 years, because this rec commission is like, commission means something in government, right? Like responsible for a budget and responsible for taxes. And this commission is responsible for basically the NDCC from the bylaws, how I understand it, but there's a few other pieces like the operation of the civic through memorandum, yada, yada. What we noticed through the rec study, and we'll hear more about it, is that there is no core body that helps to organize all of the things. And that's like one of the purposes of the rec study, is that understanding that like this commission is only this one little piece and the city owns these things, and what about the schools, and what about the spaces, and what about the park where the people play basketball, and that's not entirely arranged by anyone. And I am curious, how does one go about in a government way of building a commission, I don't know, or something that has kind of that overall view? I don't understand that.
Or you want me?
Is there any such?
I would just say the bylaw, through its planning and collaboration pieces, does speak to those are items we can be in charge of, but that is work we can take on and work we do take on through the survey.
Yeah.
But to your point,
Yeah.
the NDCC serves as like, the massive project that this commission and its budget is shaped around.
Yeah.
Right? So it mostly is that relationship between how much taxation has been already agreed to and how much of that is just running the operations of the center. So we start to do a little bit of this planning.
Yeah.
And that planning will take shape as the years go on. But it is within our purview to have, but it's not in our purview to then deliver all of those things, because that is the appendix that's inside that bylaw. Like, this is what the commission does. This is what we own for buildings. This is what we just have management agreements on. This is what we help and advocate for. And that is in the bylaw. So that is really, to put anything else in it, even to say the tennis courts, not trying to take your tennis courts, but if you guys are doing a great job doing it yourself, and a perfect example of what we want to foster. But to do that would have to be an amendment to that bylaw to say, and we now do anything with the tennis courts, and that goes to the public. They have to agree to bring each and every one of the things in, and we have these thresholds in terms of taxation and in terms of process, like a feasibility study and a utilization study, to even consider a change of any facility. So there's a whole process there.
Yeah.
Nelson Soccer has collaborated with us around a feasibility study.
Yeah.
And Curling has collaborated in the past around an ice plant merger feasibility pieces, and just to ask those questions and say, well, should this go in a direction? And neither one of those has yet gone anywhere further, but there's a startup. That's how you start the question about should there be a new facility or should there be a new collaboration as you start a feasibility study.
And I don't know if you want to do.
Sure, Dave. On the same.
You have brought up a couple of points there with regards to the commission itself. Should the commission be more focused on just recreation and non-biased towards that is one of my questions. And the other is on the advocacy for recreation, should that not also be the focus of the Rec 5 Commission?
Do you have a response to Kate first, or does that weave together?
Well, I think advocacy is a political question. That's not a staff question. But what I would say, Kate, for example, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I can't remember exactly when we built the new fields. So through this table, the fields that capital construction project was approved and actually borrowed through the regional district, and there was all the areas paid for the construction of those fields.
Okay.
So the piece that's been tied down in the bylaw are the capital assets that this taxation pays for. What is still in the bylaw is the ability for this service to plan. So that's why this planning project just doesn't incorporate regional district assets, but it incorporates in some ways all recreational assets. In this case, particularly focused. That's what also allows the master plan planning work and that kind of stuff to do. So I would say that the clarity on the capital has given assurances, probably a little bit more politically, to allow that planning process to start. If in that planning process, there's a recommendation, or like through this commission, there's a recommendation perhaps to take on more capital responsibility, then what that bylaw essentially says is you need to ask the public to expand that taxation to fund and operate and maintain and do the asset management for those capital pieces. So you have the ability to change it. You have the ability to plan broadly. And even, since the mid-90s, the district has taken on certain managerial aspects of fields and those kinds of things to create efficiencies.
Yeah.
So those things you can always do.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Does that help your question, Dave?
No.
Okay, do you want
You said, should we advocate for recreation? Is that what you said?
Both. We're sitting on a commission who is focused on recreation within our community.
Yes.
And the chair should be in a position to be non-biased towards recreation and searching for expansion of facilities, not just maintaining and keeping the lid on. However, that hasn't happened. So my question is, within this commission and its bylaws, should that be this recreations commission's focus?
So I think that I'm hearing you say the Recreation Commission should be expanding facilities. Was that what I heard you say?
I would say that not necessarily expanding facilities,
Okay.
but maintaining what is in the OCP
Yes.
as recreation space. Because it's shrinking.
The city of Nelson OCP?
The city of Nelson's OCP
Does RDPK have an OCP?
not for Nelson?
no,
Okay.
but the facility campus is currently
Yeah.
looking at
Yeah.
shrinking its current footprint.
Okay, so within the context of the discussion around tennis, and we've had a good primer on
Yeah.
parts of the bylaw, I think we'll let this sit. There's gonna be other opportunities for this conversation, but we're getting, I appreciate
Just
the
asking the
comments.
question on non-biased recreation support from this commission.
I think the commission can support
Yeah.
projects that come forward. We've supported Nelson Soccer having a soccer dome feasibility that also included looking at sites across the city. We've supported curling and looking at, with financial funds, looking at combining the ice plants to see if that's feasible and what costs, and we support those kinds of things. And the city of Nelson, through its economic development work with the RDCK at another table, has put forward a proposal with nonprofits for land adjacent to the actual recreation lands. Like this commission, those assets include the RDCK lands and this broader planning purview. And so the city of Nelson has brought forward with the nonprofit sector proposals for their lots, and commission has said there would be support for these lots beside if you add recreation. And that's obviously where you get the 5,000 square feet that is the subtext of this question, right? And so in that way, the commission has said we support recreation on our footprint. and have achieved that at the current proposal stage. Now, whether that gets through zoning on a city level is a city question. And whether or not that actually becomes a project is a provincial question around Granville. But from this commission standpoint, I think I'm reflecting it appropriately. There's been a push to have the whole footprint of the RDCK lands, for which this commission is actually in charge of, to achieve recreation. And that, I know there's disagreements as we go through the process that is currently going on. This is part of the dialogue, right? And there will be rezoning, that will be part of the dialogue. And then there'll be other proposals brought forward at some point for facilities, and that'll be part of the dialogue.
So that would refer to Joe's comment on planning within the bond.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
the activities of planning we've already taken on. And
Cheryl has it up.
Cheryl. Sure.
Thank you. So through the chair, my understanding of this commission's support of the project, the potential housing project at the city, was that we were supporting only for an application purpose, that no final decisions had been made by this committee, but we had provided our support so that a nonprofit could actually apply. That was my
Correct.
understanding.
Thank you, Cliff. Yes, that is clearer. And that is also, again, the board of the RDCK will again be another part of the engagement process, because if anything changed, there's an actual decision. Cheryl is completely correct. So there's 3 different spots there.
Thank you, Cheryl.
So supplemental through the chair.
Yeah.
Just one quick question here, and I think this would just go to Joe. Would just be like, you're saying that this commission can support planning. And I'm a little unclear, like when you talk about that, does that mean like any recreation group could come to this commission and ask this commission to support their planning? I'm just really unclear on, and I have been unclear on this since the start, because I was really unclear on why we were able to plan for non-regional.
Yeah.
I've
through the
never
chair,
really had my,
Oh, sorry, Cheryl, maybe you cut out for about 10 seconds there. But I think I've got your question. So just let me make sure that, let me know if I don't answer it. So, it's not, the commission always has a choice into what it funds. So what this commission has done is set aside grant money for projects. So this is not about the community engagement project, something totally separate. So it's more, let's use the Nelson soccer piece in particular. So Nelson Soccer came with a request for planning money, planning funds, a planning grant to help facilitate their feasibility study. So commission considered that and then provided a $5,000 grant. So you can do that. It does not mean that everybody that comes to commissions, you will support for a grant. And in fact, that's the work that you did with Tricia last year, creating the framework for how you might, in one of those in one of the applications of that framework, is to apply that to, do you feel providing this grant is worthy of public funding from the commission? So you always have that choice at this table. There is no automatic in the system.
Yeah.
Did I get it? Okay, that's right.
Cheryl, good? Good. In the interest of time, to free people going up, this is why we have the clubs come. I love that we have all had this discussion. It deepens everyone's commitment to the work. And I think it's really valuable. And so I thank you for taking the time today. Let us move on to our second item, which we've got Alex Toom, who's eagerly waiting in the online world. The City of Nelson is recently released its first version of its draft of its OCP process, which obviously covers even more scopes than what our planning has been so far. And we've asked him here to give us an overview of where recreation intersects within that larger planning document. And Alex, at this point, would you take it away?
All right, sounds good. Everyone can hear me well?
Yeah, we hear you great. Thank you.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. As Councillor Page was saying, I hope you're all aware as well already that the City of Nelson has been working on updating its OCP for the last few years. We're currently in another round of public engagement, so I encourage you to check that out as well too, and to take a look at the draft OCP itself. All of that can be found at nelson2050.ca. Indeed, the OCP obviously covers a lot more than recreation. It covers everything that the city does, and in a way even beyond as well too, because it also covers some of our advocacy work with provincial and federal governments on other policy areas beyond our scope of work. Just a couple points generally on the OCP before getting to recreation specifically. So what the project has been about is conducting a major rewrite of the OCP while still considering an update. So rewrite in the sense that we're trying to make it more concise. We're trying to synthesize ideas and policies, update them as well too, given that the last OCP was done 12 years ago now, and bringing things up to speed with current needs in the community, the community's updated vision, values and principles that were workshopped with the community 2 years ago already, and sort of best practices, legislative requirements, etc. So for recreation specifically, there's not a lot of change. So perhaps depending on your perspective, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. The parks and recreation and public space section, if you wanted to bring up the draft OCP on your computer, it starts on page 80 in the policies and objectives section. So parks, recreation, and public space section includes 4 objectives under which there's quite a variety of policies that back up.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah.
Could you share what you're looking, just for the people in the gallery, and we don't all have access to the document, so yeah, and for those online.
Sounds good. Screen to go. That should be coming. Is it good?
And then
Great.
just, I guess, just zoom in.
Yeah, zoom in a bit.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so I was saying there's four objectives. Under each of them, there's a series of policies that support those objectives, right? So the objectives being the goal, the endpoint that we're looking at getting at, and the policies are the means. And of course, I'd like to remind you as well too, what an OCP is. It's pretty high level. It's not a regulatory bylaw. It's a guidance document. So for what this means for the city and for council, once it's adopted, is that council isn't held to go ahead over any given period of time with everything that's contained in the OCP, as well. The lifespan of the OCP, even though it has to get updated every 5 years now, still has a pretty long lifespan of anywhere from 15 to 20, 25 years. But we're not able to. The city's not able to sort of contradict its own OCP. So that's kind of the legislative parameter here that we're working with. So the 3 out of the 4 objectives in here are pretty specific to parks and trails and public spaces as well too. Green spaces. There's so I'm going to go through this. Yeah, there's something about trails, Red Sands Beach as well too. We can talk about any of that if you're interested specifically. I'm still just working on the overview of it. The second objective here is about recreation. So this is, I'm assuming, where your attention is going to be the most. There's been some work to make this section more concise and condensed, but I wouldn't say that there's a significant policy change or shift in direction compared to the current OCP from the year 2013. still highlighting that for recreation specifically, that we're going to be continuing to work with the regional district, of course, to provide a wide array of recreational facilities and programming that serves the entire community. Some of the language that's changing here is to align with the new values, vision, and principle that's being introduced with this OCP. So really focusing on health and barriers to participation, accessibility, in the context of recreation. And as well, recognizing and maintaining both the downtown recreation campus and the 10th Street campus as the community's primary recreation hubs, and looking for opportunities to, as you're aware with current development, conversations, to look to sort of layer uses when possible and appropriate.
Excuse me, sorry.
Yes.
Alex, I just wanted to stop you on that one because I'm really interested in the recreation campus and the 10th Street campus because I know that has been identified by the committee and the public engagement as great places. I'm curious why Lakeside Park is not included there as a hub.
As a hub.
Is that the word hub? Yeah, as a hub, yes.
Yeah, that's a good. I guess it's sort of been considered more as a park because I'm kind of just sort of thinking on my feet here because this is one of the sections where there hasn't been a ton of change. So I'm saying it's a bit more considered as a park because of the absence of sort of indoor recreation facilities. On the other hand, if that's meaningful and important to the commission, that's certainly something that we could look at. We could look at changing as well too, or just other.
Yeah, and I just put on my city council hat for a second. I was like, can you consider changing that or adding that? No, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think those field spaces. There's lots of facilities outside of the hubs that are
There's
functioning.
basketball and bocce, and there's like structured.
And now
but
there's
also
cricket
kind of
coming.
unstructured. Yeah, I know.
Paddle
but
boards.
I forgot that. Thanks so much for that feedback.
Yeah, my pleasure. So yeah, that's something if in your deliberations, if there's any recommendations formally from the Recreation Commission that you'd like to submit in the next month, ideally, before we work on the second draft, that would be great. And just quickly to show, then the remaining objectives here are a bit more about coming back to green public spaces, park spaces as well too, where we're talking about universal access, all seasons design, these spaces, climate change as well too, and adaptation to that, looking at warming and cooling facilities. Public spaces with flexibility in mind, as well as trying to ensure that parks and public space reflect a unique sense of place and culture to avoid becoming a generic city with generic facilities that could be found anywhere in the face of the planet. So back to recreation. As I said, that's kind of, I zoom out a little bit here, just to be able to have everything on the screen at once. We have the 5 overarching policies here, again, recognizing that this isn't a recreation plan. It's really a document we're trying to keep as concise and focused as possible because it covers everything that the city is interested in. So I'd be happy to leave it at that.
Perfect. You got a question, Alex?
Questions? Yep.
Go ahead, Dave.
Within the OCP, you had mentioned that the first one that we're working from now was put in place in 2013. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
No
Yeah.
additional since 2013. Within the current one, are you identifying lost institutional space? So when it says institutional, which is highlighted in blue on the map, do you show where institutional that was in the 2013 model is no longer going to be there in the new model?
We're talking on the land use designations map?
That's correct.
There haven't been any changes to the land use designations map. Otherwise, we would have been highlighting that. The maps that have changed more around infrastructure, the parks and green space map has been updated to include more than just parks and other forms of green space and recreation in the community, but the land use designation map is remaining the same.
So the corner lot that Kudos Development sold to Nelson Cares, that used to be under institutional, which is no longer. And then the secondary piece is down by Lakeside Park, used to have an institutional dialogue on it or marking on it, which isn't there any longer. Maybe that's why they didn't recognize Lakeside as a hub, because there's no institutional space there.
What?
There's so the OCP, the 2013 OCP has been updated over time as well too. So indeed, there's been specific parcels that have changed over time through council, through OCP amendments, through zoning. So it's, you know, the current OCP isn't a carbon copy of what was adopted in 2013, but as part of this so comprehensive update process, there aren't any changes that are being made to the land use designation map.
The things aren't being redesignated, but the document lives and we update it throughout its life, and it has been, but we haven't made sweeping changes at this point, at this junction. Okay, great. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate the update. Any other questions from Commission? Cheryl, your hand is up. Sorry, see you now. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll try keeping my video on, but if my audio cuts out, if you guys can let me know, I'll drop my video. I just have a question. I'm really sort of new to the OCP experience here, and I'm wondering about like a 561.14, where it talks about the provision of public parks and recreational opportunities in the North Shore, particularly in the event that the city expands its boundaries. Like my experience with OCBs has been like the OCP is for the area that, like Area E's OCP, it only talks about like Area E and the properties in Area E. It doesn't really talk about expanding Area E's boundaries. So I'm just curious about something like that.
I'm 99% certain that this policy, as written, including the mention around expanding its boundaries, isn't a new one, that it's also contained in the current OCP, that this is a carryover policy. It does happen more often with the case of municipalities rather than, you know, compared to electoral districts, that boundary expansions happen. There's been I think at least a dozen over the last half century in Nelson, like bit by bit, little handful of parcels here and there. But there aren't any boundary expansions that are being proposed as part of the OCP. It mentions this here in the context of recreation, that the city of Nelson portion on the North Shore is pretty small, and therefore it kind of it doesn't have, say, maybe as much facilities north of the bridge than south of the bridge, which is why it mentions this, that it could be important long term to have more up there. The only other policy, I believe, that speaks to boundary expansion elsewhere in the OCP is that it could be considered following a business case analysis, if that makes sense for the city of Nelson. If there's demand and financially would make sense, it's something that could be considered, but there's no proposal at this time.
Okay, great.
Boundary expansion is a whole thing that, to the layperson, as you're starting to learn about it, is like really interesting because it's a thing that happens.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
we
thing.
took all the lands of all that lands underneath hydro
Yeah.
in the early 2000s. But obviously, this framing here is enabling that we would consider how to get some park space if someone was having that conversation. Okay.
Oftentimes, boundary expansion, as I said, like it's happened, I think at least a dozen times in the last half century. It's often a few lots at a time. I think Perrier Lane was an example of that. I don't have them all on the top of my head, but it's often, not always, but often at the request of property owners and small scale.
Yeah. To get on city services.
Correct.
Yeah, option. Gotcha.
Okay, great. So we have until the end of the month, Alex. Part of the reason of bringing this here, and it's been distributed to the directors that share services with the city of Nelson, is to provide feedback. And we've heard a little bit of feedback around what hubs could be. And so this is an opportunity just to have that weigh in from that regional side.
I have one further question for Alex.
Sure, go ahead, Dave.
Alex, we put a request in to be a delegate presentation to request that the city identify and hold the facility campus as it states now in the OCP. How do we go about, other than you've got 2 community engagement pieces left, because the delegation piece that we were given by the city to make our concerns known about the OCP process and the land designation, how do we go about making sure that our voice is heard through the OCP process? Is it attending the next 2 meetings that you have set up? Because the date that we were given by the city is 6 days after the OCP closes.
Okay, so the delegation, you've asked to have a delegation before city council
That's correct.
on the Front Street?
That's correct.
Okay, and there's an OCP process.
Yeah, and that's what I'm inquiring about.
Okay, and you're asking to provide feedback to the OCP process as well?
How do we make sure that our concerns are voiced in the OCP process?
Alex, is it fair to say you can send those concerns to the OC in relation to the OCP as feedback?
Right, Alex, the OCP team?
Alex, how do you take that feedback?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, there's a few things. There's obviously just working with staff as we work on the second draft of the OCP, and of course, there's also letting City Council know your thoughts as well too, because City Council has the highest kind of ultimate say prior to adoption. So if you already, it's not that at the day following the end of public engagement that we're going to wrap up the whole process in 24 hours and submit it. Things work much slower than that. I don't think we're going to we're not going to get to council prior to, anytime before April with the second draft either. So if you have a delegation date later in February, that's perfect. It's just that the public engagement survey phase is ending shortly. But yeah, you can attend the open houses as well and talk to my colleagues there. Sending a letter as well too, specifically regarding the OCP would be that can be sent by email to myself, to anyone in development services, Natalie, etc. And as well, there's a public hearing, of course, that has to happen prior to OCP adoption as well too, which is advertised far and wide.
Okay, so for the OCP question, which is very much a city question, you can specifically send feedback as part of the public and be available at the public hearing to speak to it. Okay, anything else on this topic? Great. Thank you, Alex, so much. Thanks for that update. Look forward to seeing you again on this topic as this develops. I'm going to take us on to 7.2. I think we could probably start that one before we have to do some sort of bio break. So, Tia, I saw data, I saw graphs, I knew I was getting Tia.
Good morning through the chair. Good morning, everybody. Yes, the data and charts are part and parcel.
Are you able to throw up those data and charts for those online?
I can share the report. Yes, most definitely. I can. Let's see. Okay, how about that? Are you seeing that screen?
Yeah, if you a little bit zoom in would be great, just for my old tired eyes.
Definitely. How's that?
Perfect, great. Thanks, Tia.
No problem. All right. I will try and keep this as brief as possible. But what I want to, basically what this report is showing is an annual report as to how recreation services, community services did over 2024. Main takeaway for this report is that usership is up at the facility, and we did come in under budget for the programming aspect. And so remember, this is not the general operations piece. This is specifically for what we do in programming. So some of the highlights worth noting over the year is that we did increase utilization of our dry arena floor. We had some drop-in sports and a very, very popular archery program. We increased our offerings for swim lessons and maintained an 85% occupancy in all of the, as an average in our programs, in our swim lessons. And moving into financials, moving into financials. What you will notice is that revenue amounts were, and I'm going to try and fit 2023 and 2024 together. Right. What you'll notice is that revenue amounts were higher than anticipated, and we spent less money than we had budgeted for. That's a good thing.
Good job. Thank you.
Yes, that's really the main takeaway here. And so we were very pleased. We were very pleased with this.
Tia, do you want us to wait till the end for questions, or I just noting Cheryl's hand is up? What would you prefer, Tia?
Maybe I'll just get through the financial piece and then I can take questions.
Okay, great. Go.
Fantastic. All right. So moving into user fees, I want you to actually disregard this chart right here. In efforts to write multiple reports for a variety of facilities, I accidentally threw in the wrong chart. But the takeaway for this is basically indicating that in 2024, we did $1.5 million in user fee revenue compared to the $1.2 million in 2023, which is up about 25%, which is quite substantial. So we are seeing more people utilizing the facility. We notice this in our head counts. We notice this in our programming. So this is very indicative of what we've seen across the board.
Okay, financials.
Yeah. So financial questions. Let's go.
Go, Cheryl.
Thank you. One really quick question, Tia, and thank you for the report. Is just like your year to date. Where was the cutoff on that, on the year to date?
December 31st.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Of course, like with any organization, the dust does settle, into January. So there is a little bit of variation here and there, but not enough to really make a noticeable difference.
Okay. Go ahead, Dave.
I have two questions to the chair. The first one is on the expenses side of things. Was the expenses down because you're having challenges staffing side of things? Because I know that came up in a couple of conversations through the Rec 5 Commission. And the second is, with your increase in revenues from rates increased when? Does this include those rate increases? Because I believe there was a rate increase in that timeline.
Yes, there was a rate increase of about 6%, if I am correct, Joe, with that number.
No. So, admissions was between 3 and 4. I can't remember the exact number now. I got a couple of things flowing around. Rental for arenas went up over 8%.
In what timelines?
That was September. So 3/4 of the year, that wasn't the case.
So this is cash in, so this includes them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Through the chair, Tia, could you repeat that number, 1.5 million in 2024, up from something in 2023?
Up from 1.2 million in 2023. Yeah.
And then on the expense question?
Oh,
The expense question with staffing.
Yes.
Yes. So the expense piece, yes, of course, with every offering of programs, we do see cancellations due to low enrollment, as well as low staffing. We did see low staffing in the arena over the fall, not just due to the closure, but to also we did have challenges with recruitment.
And that's for the public skate and.
Yeah, so through the chair, Craig, I can't remember what our staffing, when we got to full hours for staffing in Nelson. Oh, Craig, you're the lucky winner of the Chipmunk Voice this morning. Your prize is coming later. Just a moment, he'll have, sorry,
You have to disconnect and reconnect.
he's gonna have to disconnect.
Okay, we'll give it a sec. It's too bad it's so fast. It's too bad it's not lead like you can.
You can't actually understand it because it would just be humorous.
And it'd be fun.
Like the song. You can hear the lyrics.
Do you not know what that technology?
When you say the number of people, so that was the question.
To Dave's question was about, because Dave was asking about, did we have staffing, like did we have where we didn't have our full complement of staff? That was Dave's question.
Yeah.
Craig can answer, so Craig can answer that piece. Tia, while Craig is coming back on, do you have the number for the use? Yes, you're good. The number for the usage increase?
Yeah, I have you. You don't need to see all of my big notes, but yes. So we did see increase in the amount of memberships sold. In 2023 was around 9,000, and in 2024 we were up almost close to 11,000 memberships sold. As a also in admissions, we were 86, almost 87,000 admissions sold in 2023, and we sold over 101,000 admissions in 2024. So irregardless of an increase in user fees, we saw an increase in usership.
Okay, Craig, and you had some answers around full-time.
Yeah, through the chair, I think Joe was referring to the aquatics hours of operation, and we had expanded the Nelson complex was the first of the three large centers to get to pre-pandemic, close to pre-pandemic hours, and I believe that was in the spring that Nelson expanded. So we'll talk about that in my budget report. As it relates to the arena staffing, I think that the one thing that happened different in Nelson this year is that the arena programs started a little bit earlier than in the past, where we had started in later in September and October. And I believe there was a couple of weeks where we had gone with public skating and shinny and stick and puck, etc. But we did have some challenges recruiting staff in the arena to work those sporadic shifts, daytime, weekends, etc. So, and that did carry on into a little bit into the normal season. So, to Tia's point, there were some challenges with arena staffing that led to some cancellations of those programs.
Okay, does that get at your question, Dave?
It does, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Kate, you were out of the room when we had covered membership numbers.
Okay.
9,000 in 2023. 11,000 in 2024. Increase to 11,000.
Oh, no, increase more.
More.
So it's
No.
9,000, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tia.
9,000 memberships sold in 2023 to almost 11,000 memberships sold in 2024.
Understood that as well.
Do you need monthly memberships? Term-based. Term-based, thank you. Okay, cool.
And then for admissions, I wrote down 87,000 individual admissions versus in 2023 and 101,000 admissions in 2024.
That's correct.
I just know you love it. Okay, we can keep going. Facility rentals.
Oh, yes, facility rentals. There's nothing very extraordinary here. We remain quite stable as far as facility rentals from user groups and third-party groups between 2023 and 2024. Nothing extravagant, but I guess to Joe's point, you will see that there was a small dip in the arena just due to the closure, but actually not as much as you would think because of the increase in rentals in the first half of the year in the winter season. So from here, I'm going to move on to 2025. So in 2025, the programming team is really looking forward to make some changes to improve accessibility, improve customer service, standardization practices, and some of the highlights of how we intend to do that. You will see that our camp registration date for our summer camp registration date will be earlier than even last year, to be mid-April, and this aligns with some of the other community program registrations, allowing families to choose their best fit for their child's summer activities, as opposed to not knowing what if they can get in, if they can't get in. There's more access right away to determine how they want to plan out their summer. We are launching in spring adapted swim lessons. And this improves accessibility to learn survival skills to those who would not necessarily be comfortable or suitable for traditional swim lessons. So this allows a more focus on swim survival and gets the skills so that we have safe use in water. As well as facility rental advertising, we're going to ramp up a little bit of advertising for the ice rentals during our spring break and summer ice, when there is a lower utilization of ice, and this will give more availability for general public to book times, and when throughout the year typically they do not. So from here, you'll actually see more quarterly reports coming this way. You'll see more data, you'll see more charts to keep you apprised of the progress. If you feel like you would like to see some different information on how things are moving along, please let me know, and we can do a little bit more to tailor to what gives you the best information to make the better decisions for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tia. Okay.
Thanks, Tia. Through the chair, I have a question regarding the fee structure and the labeling of the fee structure and how it's applied to different groups and stuff. Have you had any feedback on anyone who's booking spaces not knowing where they should fit in that fee structure, or is there have you had any feedback on that? Is it working well? Oh, maybe
Trish.
Sorry.
Trish has put her hand up for that, Tia.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, through the chair, and thanks for the question. So I would say yes in general, and I would say coming from our CSR3 staff, which are the ones that are responsible for administering our facility booking procedures and practices, we've actually done a lot of work to update that chart and improve some clarity around the wording so that it's easier to understand and even aligns better with some other documentation. So that work has been completed, and you will see it when in the fees and charges conversation, which I think would come in April at all rec, maybe?
Yes, April.
And so you'll see some wording alterations, and if you help me remember, I'll try to highlight what some of those are during that conversation. So yes, it's been, I would say more so, not so, I would say it's a bit of an issue from users, but more so from a consistency of application and making sure that the whole district is actually applying those consistently. Okay. So that's been a bit of a piece of work, but there's been some good work that's been done on it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Go ahead, Dave.
I have a question with regards to, and it might be for Trish, not Tia, but at what point in time are we at and exceeding capacity within the facilities? So I'm looking at a growth of, almost these user hours. So we've got a 3,500 user hour as the peak. We're getting closer and closer to that, and that's only identifying specific pieces, not things that we can't accommodate. Where do we see that date coming? Is that 2025, 2026?
Through the chair, fantastic question. I would say we are very close to hitting, and I'm going to specifically maybe talk around the membership, like the general admission user to the NDCC, because there's a point where right now we're seeing, I'll call it a benefit of significant increased revenue coming into the facility. But at the end of the day, the facility wasn't designed to meet the degree of demand that we're starting to see. And so there will be a point where there's the capacity of the building, and then there's kind of the user experience. And I would say it's the user experience that we might see where it becomes more of an impact sooner than later, where people start to go, this just isn't working for me. I can't get into the space, there's not a piece of equipment I want to use, or the pool feels too busy, or whatever it might be. That threshold, I don't know that we have a finite moment in time as to where that's going to hit until we start to go, boy, revenue's going to start to cap out, and the question's going to be why? Is it capping out because we're like, the experience isn't there anymore for people, or they can't participate in the things that they want, or we just can't simply offer any more programming? But I would argue that that day is not far off in the future.
So now would be the planning piece.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Ripping off that question. So, especially around fitness,
We rip a lot.
I hear from private operators. I hear from private operators that tension between when we hit capacity and then expand potentially space or plan to expand space because we're providing a superior experience with the facility at the detriment of the larger ecosystem of private gyms and private studio spaces that could then take up that slack.
Would you like me to respond?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd love to know your thinking on
So my thinking,
where we find the balance on that.
well, so my thinking is, this is I'm gonna call it my personal perspective on how this sort of like rolls in. So through the chair, my apologies, I just said that first. So I believe that the NDCC type of services are targeted towards a certain market. I think we're very careful to make sure that we don't enter into the space that private operators or more niche or boutique type services within a community are participating in. And because if they're picking it up and are able to meet that demand, then they should run with that service. We want to stick in the area that sort of serves the group of people that our type of service is meant to provide service to. So we're cautious constantly in what we get into versus maybe even pull back from if a private operator is picking it up. So it's a gentle balance back and forth and trying to keep apprised as to where those services are at. Right now, we can tell you that the people that we seem to serve are close, if not exceeding capacity in a lot of spaces within that building. And I'll just use fitness as an example. You can walk into the NDCC at almost any given time, and the gym fitness space is extremely well utilized. So I don't know that I even answered your question, but in my mind, it's a careful thing of what local government gets into versus the private sector.
Go ahead, Joe.
And so what I would add, where there is strong introductory fitness, and that's really where we are. I mean, we do span like where we have a full weight set. You know, for example, the Nelson lease being a high performance use, have the equipment inside that facility to do the work that they need. So we do span the whole piece, but we don't concentrate on that area. But where there is strong public fitness is where strong private fitness comes from. So it's actually, as Angus used earlier, but it is the gateway. Let's just rip on Angus, but it is the gateway to those more intense experiences for people who want more. It's been, to be quite honest, the first fitness center in Nelson is that center. That was the first fitness center. What makes it very in particular popular, though, is that ability to go between in the building. And I'm seeing Kyle nod, but I know that there's people that plan around drop-in hockey at a certain time to go then to the fitness center, to then hopefully shower, then go into the hot tub area and relax and then leave.
Yeah.
We know that there's our team can tell you of the ski rush. The end of the day, skiing, coming down to go hit the warm the warm area, which was a very strategic thing in 2016 to create. So those kinds of pieces all work together. But I would say they do work together. So what it is, that balancing act, as Tricia said, of trying to make sure that we're in the introductory phase, maybe in the recovery phase for people for injuries, those kinds of spaces, but not getting into that high performance piece that might be the sports lab or the hot yoga or those types of kind of services.
Okay, great. Chair, prompted a question. You want to riff on this one too?
I do. Thank you. Through the chair. I'm curious where these conversations take place, because they're not taking place at this rec commission. And I'm wondering if these private fitness companies or groups have been included in our recreation study. So those are just a couple questions.
Right, great questions.
Well, that there have been some private that have responded to the group questionnaire. So Cheryl, it's more about what we haven't, where it would come to this table is when if we are talking about significantly changing the scope of our service. So like the scope has been well defined. We haven't changed what that scope is. So it probably hasn't been to this commission, but the last time there was a major conversation around this was probably in Creston when we were developing that facility between 2004 and when we got the final design in 2007. One of the other pieces to remember is that the fitness center right now is actually driving down the cost for community recreation as a whole. So as our consultant, who ironically runs facilities at that point in time, ran facilities for municipalities, but in a private 3P partnership kind of way, is that you want the public sector to be kind of on the wellness side of it, and I think that's where we firmly are. And then the private sector picks off the gravy
on the single side.
And that's really the important piece to understand, is that if this was a private sector, completely a private sector enterprise, do not think that we close down the fitness center, all of those people can be accommodated in the center or wouldn't even be accommodated. Our price entry point and the service that we're trying to deliver is a mass piece, and it's to ensure that the most vulnerable in our community have that access. Private sector is not concerned about the most vulnerable. And so that's where this balance is. And I would actually say in Nelson, we've got that balance in a good space right now. Private sector is able to, in most cases, able to thrive. I mean, they have competition amongst themselves, but we serve that band that we're intending to serve.
Cheryl, hand still up?
Yeah, supplemental if I may, because I just finished hearing, I think we all just finished hearing Tricia saying that the fitness is very well used and it's almost over capacity. And I'm kind of wondering, if there's all these private companies here too, that we should be trying to get them to the table to see if there's joint solutions we could work with together to solve the problem that we just heard about, which was the complete fullness of the fitness area.
Let staff first, if anybody wants to jump in on that, or is that a conversation we would have?
At this point in time, not right now, not until after you finish your consultation.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
I have two questions. One is in Taya's presentation in the aquatic section, you're going to be working with hybrid solutions for swimming lessons, funding of training programs for staff. Is that outdoor, like open water swimming? What, when she says hybrid, what she referring to just the pool area? Are you talking about parks and Lakeside Park and open water?
Tia?
Hi, yes, thank you. So hybrid, as in, sorry, where are you
Your
seeing?
presentation, you said in aquatics in the 2025 budget was slightly reduced, but your research and planning is being done to launch adaptive lessons. So I'm thinking that's a hybrid piece for accessibility, or is it a hybrid piece for programming?
The adapted lessons are for those who cannot, or where traditional swim lessons are not a suitable choice. So whether they have some type of developmental, social, any type of developmental disability or issue, they have options to be able to still gain swim survival skills in a more adapted way, where they could either use smaller class sizes, they could do more private, where it's way more customized. They can have a caregiver come in and provide that additional support. So it just provides more options and accessibility for people to learn to swim.
And will you be doing this in conjunction and collaboration with Special Olympics? Since they have the training in the swim side of things for staffing, coaching?
No, we are not collaborating with Special Olympics. We are getting a little bit of a jump ahead of the Life Saving Society, who is prepared to launch an adapted swim lesson segment to their traditional lessons as well. So we are, yeah.
That's fine. I wasn't sure which direction you were going, so I just wanted clarity on it.
Okay, thank you.
But life saving predominantly and skills, swim skills through life saving. Okay, great. Any other questions? Seeing none, it is now time for a bio break. And before we go on to 7.3, we'll give I can't see the clock today.
20 is,
We'll give it
17 minutes after.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
10:30?
10:30.
Did I finish your?
Okay, so
Are we muted?
For everyone that's in the public gallery, if you need to go to the washrooms are out the door, down the corridor on the left. And do not go beyond that corridor. The doors should be locked. As one of our directors says, it's Fort Knox outside there, but don't go into the staff working area.
Wait, does it matter? Does it, the door is open?
Usually it's possible. You never know every once in a while. Oh, sorry, thanks. Just like the green button.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, that takes us, thank you, everybody. We can hear, everyone can hear us online. Cheryl, yeah, thank you. Let's take us on to the public engagement.
What? Oh, yes, okay, another time. Oh my God. Sorry, I'm with you.
Is that my cue?
That's your cue.
Okay, perfect. Thank you through the chair. So there's a brief information report contained in your package. It's on the screen. Hopefully everyone can see it. It's just to give a high level overview of where we're at in this project. So I'll start right from the top and sort of highlight some of the survey information specific to the resident survey. So both surveys are now closed. The resident one closed, I believe, in early January, and the group one closed roughly the middle of January. So you can see for the resident one, we had approximately 2,026 responses. 1,700-ish were fully completed and another 324 were partially completed. You can see the breakdown as far as where those that responded, where they were responding from. So 65% of those responses came from the city of Nelson, 10% from defined area E, which participates in the taxation of the service specific to Rec 5. And then the other area E is the other portion of area E that does not contribute through taxation to this particular service. And then 18% from area F. So overall, we feel there's been a pretty decent response. Certainly there's been lots of hot topics that have driven people to our engagement project, one being the housing challenge on the vacant lot. So in many ways, actually, there's been lots of reason for people to pay attention, which has been probably helpful. So if you can scroll down, Joe, into the group survey. So I just itemized the list of the 36 responses and where those groups were from or what they were representing that participated in the survey. So I think there were 36 total, 33 were fully completed. And as those that have completed both or either of these surveys, know that there is some open-ended questions within each of these that now the consulting team is in the process of evaluating and going through and consolidating and so on and so forth.
Yeah, how many groups did you reach out to, of which 36 replied?
Oh, good question.
54, I believe. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. So yeah, we feel we've got a good response. If you can just keep scrolling down a little bit, Joe. So I think what might be most important for everybody to pay attention to is the next step. So you can see that we are in the process of consolidating all the data and analyzing that information over the next early part of February. The working group will reconvene sometime the week of February 24th is what we're earmarking right now for their review of the initial draft of the findings from that report. And then we will start to release the promotional materials at the end of February as to when then the next community engagement will happen. We need to take the what we heard report back to the community and have that information truth tested with the public as a whole to say, does this look like it represents what you've heard, what you're hearing, and or to actually just see how everybody responded to those questions. So that will be the start of phase 3. As we kind of move towards the end of February. And then certainly there'll be the final report, which we will then go through a similar process as if you're following it all in the Castlegar project, where we will then do a whole promotion about where people can find that final report information. So I think there's lots of work going on. We know there's lots of conversation about this project. And we're continuing to kind of keep our ear to the ground to see how that may inform what our next steps are, should we need to have that conversation.
Okay. Can't see the panel, so Cheryl, you have a question? Speak up, I guess. Any other questions? Dave, go ahead.
The data that you're compiling right now, will that be available to the public?
It would, yeah, we would actually make the report and I don't know how the consultant will put it together, but going off a little bit about what they did in Castlegar, which I'm going to assume is similar, is what they did is they consolidated kind of some content information and then put a technical appendices to it that actually then had a whole bunch of the actual more raw data. So that's what they did in Castlegar. I'm going to assume that that's going to be similar.
The working group meeting, the week of February the 24th, I personally, but Nelson Regional Sports Council is not on your working group email. Do we have to put a formal request in to be invited into that, or do I just leave it with my name personally?
So through the chair. So the working group is made up of the commission, representatives of the city of Castlegar, and
Oh, City of Nelson.
wrong committee, city of Nelson. and so there's a terms of reference that guides who is on that working group, and it's closed to that working group.
Any further questions? Seeing none from above, we will be getting more data all throughout February, so lots to dig into, so keep your ears peeled, whatever that euphemism means. And let's move on to our next, Cheryl, there it is. I knew if I talk long enough, there'd be a question.
Sorry, Keith. Sorry, Keith. Through the chair. So I don't have a meeting on February 24th. Is that the right date for the working group? I was just trying to find that.
So through the chair, it has not been scheduled yet, Commissioner Graham. It will be, Director Graham. It will be coming. We've just sort of earmarked the week at this point.
So no vacations that week.
Correct.
Because you'll have that working group meeting to come to. Okay. Seeing no further questions, let's move on to our financial plan. So far, so Commission has a report dated before you for February 5th from Craig Stanley, Operation Asset Management. Craig, take us away on our draft.
Thanks, Chair. Could you confirm that I sound okay?
You sound great.
And could you confirm that you can see the presentation?
We can see the presentation.
Thanks, Chair. And through the chair, this is a summary of the report that is in the agenda. There's no new information. There may be some discussion points that elaborate on some of that, but this is not new information that wasn't part of the agenda package. I'm just speaking to the highlights. And I'll try to get through and maybe pause at each section, just if there's any questions pertinent to those sections. But we'll just step into it. The first part is a review of 2024, and as you heard from Tia's report and from Tricia's comments, is that user fees exceeded budget expectations by a significant amount, $293,000, or about 24% in 2024. So that's admissions, passes, and it indicates the facility was well utilized. And I'll have more to say about how that had an impact on operations when we talk about staffing for 2025. The expenses, salaries were slightly underspent due to a position in fitness not being filled for several months. And in aquatics, we had budgeted for the full year of full hours, but we didn't get there until later on in the first or earlier in the second quarter. And so aquatics was slightly underspent. So there's some savings there. In insurance, we had a facility valuation from the insurance assessors, appraisers, that caused an unexpected increase of about $20,000 more than we had budgeted. We believe that's leveled off, and so we shouldn't see any more increases. But that was unexpected and did hit the financial statement. And equipment, we had ordered $40,000 in the fitness equipment, but we haven't received it. So there's a $40,000 underspend in equipment that will be carried forward into 2025. And contracted services and repairs and maintenance were slightly underspent. On the capital side, the pool boilers were replaced. That was funded by the Growing Communities Fund. That's about $241,000 that was funded for that. The rooftop unit purchased in 2022 was installed. So that showed up in early 2024, and we put it in late 2024. So that was a long delivery cycle. And we had budgeted $100,000 for the refrigeration plant engineering. We had no cost put to that yet this year, but the good news on the engineering side is that we had budgeted $100,000 for the S226 to fund that planning phase of the project, and this is being done in conjunction with the same project in Creston for S224. And so we had budgeted $100,000 for both services. But the actual engineering contract was for $50,000 total, so $25,000 for S226. So there's some savings there. And I'll talk a little bit more about 2025 capital and that project later on in this presentation. But just as part of that, there is some increased scope to include some Fortis funding and some energy assessments that will enhance and potentially fund the refrigeration plant, but we still have to do the studies on that first. As the report states, the surplus in 2024 was approximately 1.235 million. Of that, 847,000 was generated through operations. As I said, user fees were significantly more than we anticipated, and operational savings, as I mentioned, led to that 847,000 in operational surplus. Capital was 309,000 in surplus, and the campus study was underspent $78,000, and that will be carried forward, as you will see. Revenue projection. So this getting into, and actually I'll pause right there if anyone had any questions about 2024.
Okay, Kate, and then Dave.
Thanks, Craig. Through the chair. I recall from my first days here that we don't automatically move money from surplus to reserves. Are you going to tell us what the potential plan or what staff proposes to do with that surplus?
That is, I will talk about that actually pretty quick.
Thank you.
Dave?
In light of the increased revenue for user fees, will the commission look at identifying or back to 2023, 2024 fee structure, since there is that huge surplus there that was at the same timeline as your 3% increase?
Through the chair, I'll defer to Joe on that one.
Well, through the chair, no, that is not part of our plan. We'll, as we go through it, I think it'll become obvious why. So
I would just add, because we have the user fee bylaw framework in the first place, it's always, and ICE allocation is one of the pieces we'll be working on in 2025, is understanding those costings around ICE and what goes into it. Is we're constantly in a cycle of reviewing. We just did aquatics, came back to it, looking at the revenue over time and adjusting that balance between taxation and user fees over time. So in some way, yes, because the policy drives us to always be looking at those numbers and bringing them back into balance and having true understanding of costs and fees associated and how much subsidization comes in. But in the near term, on a year-to-year basis, no, because we have other obligations that have been underfunded for decades, and that's what Joe's saying is going to become apparent as we go through the rest of this. Go ahead, Craig.
Thanks, Chair. I'll speak to the 2025 financial plan, the draft budget with revenue projections shown. I don't expect you to be able to see that graphic. It is in the report. Requisitions is an increase of 12%, and 4.46% of that is due to the debenture interest, which I'll speak to in the expense side. User fees budget considers like levels of revenue. So if Tricia had mentioned that maybe we've capped out on participation, memberships, etc., then a comparable level of revenue has been budgeted for 2025. Rental revenue is comparable to 2024 actuals, and as well, sale of services is somewhat comparable to a similar budget in 2024. And the surplus, as shown, is 1.235 million, as I had mentioned. On the expense side, salary shows an increase for CPI and union bargaining. So currently, with all of our three collectives bargaining units in the RDCK between Castlegar, Nelson, and Crescent, they're all 10 months behind on having an agreement. And so we're getting to the bargaining table with them in February and March. And so not knowing, we have anticipated what that 10 months of retro could be. And we're also anticipating what a lift to their wages could be. So that's part of the requisition, the salary increase. But also inside of this, noting that the facility, especially in fitness, that we are seeing high participation rates. we are recognizing and making a request, as it mentions in the reports, for some additional part-time funding for CSRs, for some additional part-time funding for custodians. And there's an $11,000 ask for some additional supervisory staff. So we'd look at the supervisory positions and reconfigure those. So that's a net impact of $35,000 to the staffing contingent where over 2024. So that is technically new staffing that we are asking for to keep up to the demand in the facility. And the other, sorry, is there a question?
Yeah,
Yeah, this
great.
question.
Thanks so much to the chair. When you're asking for that bump in salary, are those permanent positions, or are you looking at a contract for this fiscal year?
Through the chair, those are the hours. For the custodians and the CSRs in Nelson are union. Those would be part-time, and so that it's not a contract and it's not permanent, but it is something that we are able to adjust because it's part-time hours and it just comes down to scheduling. The supervisory would be a lift. The $11,000 in supervisory would be a lift permanently, and I can speak to the commission at an in-camera session about staffing if required to discuss that particular position.
Thank you.
Expenses not fully spent in 2024 kept close to zero, but in repairs and maintenance, you'll notice there's a significant jump, and we did realize through assessments and notification that the elevator requires approximately $40,000 in repair, and the electric Zamboni is going on 7 years now, and those battery packs usually last 5 years, and they're showing their age, and so a new battery pack for the Zamboni is approximately $30,000. We've already ordered that because without a Zamboni we don't have ice, but that is a lift to the financial plan over last year. And again, the fitness equipment that we ordered last year and didn't spend, we carried that $40,000 forward to pay for it when it arrives this year. And with our debentures maturing at an inopportune time, there was a huge lift in the interest, and I think it was 2.25 to 4.3. Don't quote me on that, but it's an increase to S226 of about $156,000 this year, and it's a little bit more next year, as you'll see in the 5-year plan. So that accounts for the 4.46% increase in requisitions. And the community engagement project is budgeted at $100,000 for 2025. In capital, we have $150,000 for 2 rooftop units. Those are HVAC units, so heating and ventilation and cooling units that sit on the roof. And so we'll be procuring and replacing 2 of those. And the refrigeration plant with the engineering, as I mentioned, through Polar Engineering. And so the procurement of the equipment and the installation would be next year, that $1.05 million. I think the one thing that I would say about that is even just this week and even last night, we received a memo from Polar Engineering that indicated the scope of that work may change and the value of that work may change. And so that $1 million right now, we would come back to the commission if there was any required lift in that for 2026. But right now we're budgeting $1 million and for that, just over $1 million for that project, and that's the target. And capital combined is $1.2 million for 2025, would be mostly funded by the surplus, but also up to $165,000 from reserves to make that balance at 1.2. Current reserve balance is $843,000, as mentioned in the report. And go
Just
ahead.
Can we just stop right there? Because can we go back to that one?
Yep.
Because this is actually a decision point. So this a little bit is about Kate's question during the surplus piece. So Kate, you're absolutely correct. There is nothing that puts that surplus into reserve. The reason we didn't do that is that what we're showing here is that right now, the current plan is to use the majority of that surplus to fund capital. So
it's a good news story because we've been planning this ice plant we've been walking up to this wall for a number of years.
yeah. So there is still a draw of 165,338 from reserves. To get to that current, out of that, so that would reduce that 843,229, right? So the 843 is current balance. We're planning right now to use 165,338 in 2025.
Pause. So that means we're not, with the current plan, we're not, by the end of this fiscal, adding to surplus,
Adding to reserves.
to reserves.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so just, but, because your question is bang on. So the commission, understanding that we're still, I would say that our capital planning in Castlegar, I think it's fair to say, is our furthest advanced. Nelson and Creston, we're still waiting on the work done by consultants. Keith will be, and the directors on the board, they will be familiar with that project. That project should have been finished in fall of 2023, but due to staffing issues at the consultancy, it's still not complete today.
You're talking about the
Asset management plan.
So there's a project for the RDCK writ large to come up with policy and procedure for all services and all facilities across all of it, from water, from transfer stations to recreation, and put that asset renewal, asset management and reserve building formally into policy, because certainly $800,000 is not going to replace that facility.
And to Kate's point, I think to many people around the commission, especially that have been here for a while, sorry, Don, but a while, this service hasn't funded in a strategic way for the replacement of capital. You know, we have benefited from, not being able to have enough lifeguards to open up that facility. We have fortunately benefited from, benefited from increased usership. But the weakness in this 5-year financial plan is clearly that we don't embed a financial commitment to asset management. And so I'm going to give we're super high level. In Castlegar, in 2023, strategically started where there was $600,000 of requisition that its only purpose is to fund reserves or fund capital. And that's increasing by $100,000 a year until it meets $1 million. So we just had the Castlegar meeting last night. So this year we are at 800,000 of requisition for capital. But even that service this year, right now, projecting in that budget, we are projecting borrowing $911,000 to fund other capital work. So interestingly, they have a plan. The facility, I would say, has more immediate work required to it. I think, Craig, I can't remember, but we're almost up to close to $2 million in roofing projects in Castlegar this year. So, but there's a plan, and through that, we're able to give commission a pretty accurate look at what that's going to look like going forward. Here, you'll see, we'll point out in the 5-year plan where we're at, but just know that we are right now in the plan, what you have in reserves is probably okay, but we don't have all the information for this service yet. So I just really want to stop. This is your biggest challenge, is this capital piece going forward. The advantage that you have is that 2029, when you see the piece Craig talked about, the increase in the interest for the debentures. So 2029, you see one interest payment, one little drop. 2030 is where we are paid up our debenture. So those are kind of strategic dates to remember. Sorry, Craig, I thought we should hit that.
No, it's fine. Thanks, Joe. I think Director Graham has a question.
Yeah, I was going to say Director Graham, and then I've got Tom, and then I've got Dave.
Thank you. So through the chair, I'll start with the comment that a 12% increase in taxation will be very unpalatable to the taxpayers. And my second question is, are these products coming from the US for these capital purchases?
Through the chair, we're not sure where they're coming from yet. We haven't tendered. I mean, the conversation Joe and I had about fitness equipment is we procure our services and our goods and services according to our procurement policy, and it's a best value. And certainly if there was any premium attached to any product that we were purchasing, that would probably eliminate it as a best value. And any currency exchange could have an impact on that as well. We do shop across the border when there is value to be had, but I think in the current market uncertainty, it would be tough to say that there's best value in that.
Thank you. So through the chair, I'm sure this is going to be coming across in every discussion that we're having. And just, there's so much uncertainty right now in the world that I think, I don't know how much, I think we have to start paying attention to where our potential products are coming from in our discussions. Thank you.
Yeah, and through the chair to that, we did have a discussion about that as a senior management team. So I'm sure the district is aware of it through our procurement and project management.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, thanks. Firstly, to Craig, through the chair, our good friend Mr. McDonnell offered us two, which I thought were very crucial and important capital projects. If you need a reminder, I have them at the tip of my tongue.
Yes, please.
Washroom separators in the men's washroom. Actually bring it up to the 19th century washroom facility, and the overhang protections on the exit doors. So I just wonder what our process might be to have those included, because I think both of them are important, and definitely bringing our washrooms up to standard would be, men's washroom especially. I haven't been in the women's one, so I wouldn't know. So, yeah, any comments on that, Craig?
Yeah, through the chair, thanks for that. Yeah, thanks for that, Director Newell. The washroom dividers was a miss, and staff were reminded of that. And I think Mr. McDonnell had sent another follow-up email. Thanks for that. But that will be taken care of this year. It's in the, I would say it's in the budget and we would cover that off in repairs and maintenance or equipment, not necessarily capital. But the portico or the ice protection for the exterior stairs, I think that's a bigger project. We do have money in consulting for assessments and that sort of thing. And so I think that would require a bit of an engineer's look at what would be required and then a scope of work. So that is being considered. Whether it's in the capital plan or if it's just in the assessment planning phase right now, it will be part of our work plan for 2025.
Is that the stairs that goes down between the Nelson Cares building? When you say
no, it's on
the curling rink.
Yeah, through the chair. It's coming off the slope roof at the back parking lot, and it's as ice and snow slides off of that roof, the stairs aren't protected.
But it is you're right, it's a big job supplemental.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So last year, the debentures 200,000, the payments 200,000, everyone's happy. Now it's flipped. And I wonder if there's other options rather than paying 400 grand a year on interest. In other words, a good investment could be using the reserves to pay down the balance so that we pay it off sooner than 2029. For example, just came to me now when I saw the unbelievable number in the flip, actual double flip from 50-50 interest and principal to now, what is it, a third and 2/3. So,
through the chair, if we had actual funding for the capital reserves and we had money available in those reserves, that would surely take us through to 2026. I would say that might be something to consider, but in this case, you would be rolling the dice that you would need to then borrow short term to do it. Your debenture interest, although it went up, is better than what the interest is, and we don't have enough in reserves to pay it all the principal off.
no, so we'd have to raise supplemental? So we'd have to raise taxes shorter term to end this agony of double interest payments for 5 years. Thanks.
And remember, it's that, the rate doubled. I just want people, like, it's not, there's not new interest payments. It's just that the rate renewed, and I think these ones went, Craig, just correct me if I'm way wrong, but I'm pretty sure it went from about 2.1 to 4.1.
Yeah, it's a little bit higher than 2.25, I think, Joe, and could be even as high as 4.3 now. So,
Right.
Well, I put it out there for us to just ponderate, as I used to say, as we go forward, short-term pain for this real long-term pain for 5 years. Anyway, I'm done.
Okay. I think we saw Dave.
Yeah, the debenture in question, this is for the borrowing for the NDCC as it stands.
This was for the construction of the NDCC from 2003 to 2005.
Through the chair on a supplemental on that one, so when that matures, now would be the time, because we're coming to the end of the life of said NDCC. It's 20 years coming up in the next, with us hitting this year. So it's us hitting occupancy max in the next potential 8 to 12 months, as well as having to continue borrowing, would now not be the time to be planning for facility upgrade, considering what's going on with the curling rink, what's going on with the indoor soccer facility, what's going on with the NDCC, what's going on with the OCP, and where we're planning on spending our money, would now not be the planning piece.
Through the chair, that's why we're doing
Well, we're talking about different pieces of it, but we're also talking about removing facility space at the same time.
I think it's just to be delicate about where the city has its facilities and its planning and its budgeting, and where Recreation 5 would rule and the narrow scope of what we do, but the planning piece writ large falls. So our asset renewal obligations are very clearly around the existing NDCC building and making sure that programming, entry-level programming, is being facilitated through there. And I don't think, I haven't seen the loan, but I don't think it's going to turn into a pumpkin on midnight of December 31st, 2029. So we're going to keep trying to make that facility run.
Oh, yeah, okay. So the loan doesn't end in 2030, that's when the rate changes again.
No, the loan will be done. The loan will be
The loan, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
good, I understood that.
Yeah, so the debenture is fully paid off.
Okay, so I have one comment and I think 2 questions. Is it my turn?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so contrary to Commissioner Director Graham, I would say that folks agree that higher taxes equals more facilities, and there is some appetite for that, especially now. I was curious if Craig or Joe, if there's a way to show what that 12% increase looks like on the average house. That's something that I really love when we do at the city. Like, the average house is $650,000. So this increase for an average homeowner will be $31 per year or something like that. Could you crunch that number for us?
Yeah, so through the chair, it's a great question, Kate. This budget is the budget that will be in the draft financial plan for the regional district.
I know.
And have that done. So yeah, we'll be doing those calculations.
I know, but I don't sit at that table, and I'm just curious for this exact purpose,
Yeah.
what is that amount per household?
When they get that calculation, because they usually use this service as one of the pieces,
Yeah.
I will make sure that I get that to you.
Okay, awesome. And then my second question is around planning for the future. You guys have to talk before me, Mr. McCullough. With regards to putting into reserves, I have a curiosity about whether or not there's any precedent or appetite or consideration to having a specific amount added to a user fee that is intended specifically to go into reserves for capital projects. In that way, because we know that requisitions goes to every single household, even people that don't use the facilities, but the user fees are for the people who love it and want it to be maintained and so on. And so I'm curious if that is a consideration when we're talking about future planning, right? I mean, I think community-wide, there's an understanding of the community good and everyone participates and everyone participates in the taxation. But for the actual user piece, I have a curiosity about putting, like, I'm just going to pretend that this is a number, like 50 cents per entry is actually going to go straight into reserves. Is there a precedent for that? Go ahead.
So it's a great question. So when, this is the blunt answer.
Right.
Because it's actually not the user fee that's the problem.
Right.
It's the requisition.
Yeah.
So when we set in, in 2017, we looked at all of our costs across the district, and we based our user fee policy on those costs. So what the user fee is paid has a direct connection to those costs. What we also realized, because some services were funding their reserves, some services were not funding their reserves, that we couldn't include capital expenditures in those costs, because it's just you're using wealth, but this one's doing nothing. So what we did was, is at that time we took what so at that point in time in 2017, there were a lot of good work done about what you should be putting away based upon the value of your building.
Yes.
And right now, for the life of me, I can't remember the number. I want to say it's 1.75%. And most economists felt that was actually too low, but we used the number that was published. So we took what the current value of our buildings were at that time, used that amount and added that to the cost to calculate the user fees.
Okay.
So user fees actually contain, as part of their structure, like a contribution to capital. Requisitions do not.
Okay.
Requisitions, the only place where maybe the requisitions do is Castlegar right now. And the reason that in 2017 we did that, and this is just a fact, this service chose the fund operator. So the reason that you're seeing this increase now, Cheryl, is because this is now the progression of decisions that were made 8 years ago, or maybe not. Paul may remember better than me. But this service had $1 million in reserves.
We finished the pool renovation and that.
And the choice of the day was to decrease up to actually fund operations from those reserves to deplete them.
Yeah.
And that is why we are here today.
That was one of our first meetings in like 2018, 2019. We had a precursor on that.
So Kate, unfortunately, and Cheryl and Tom and Janice and Keith, we're at that crossroad right now.
Well, it's a great time because the community is galvanized.
So that's why I wanted to stop and talk about capital right here. I'll explain in the 5 year, because it's not clear. Like in Castlegar, I can actually do up a sheet that's really clear. On this service, I can't because everything that's in it is almost accidental. But I can show you how it flows through.
Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry, Craig.
No, it's okay. Jared, is it okay to continue?
Please, thanks, Greg.
I'll just, without sharing, I have one more slide, and it is about the 5-year, and the 5-year financial plan was part of the report, the agenda package. So you'll notice after 2025, the requisitions increased 3%, 2026 and forward, and revenue and sales and salaries and expenses follow that CPI curve, approximately 3% a year. Debenture interest, we increased in 2026, and there's a slight decrease in 2029, as Joe pointed out. And if we extended this one out to 2030, you'd see that at some point the debenture principal and interest stops. The capital fluctuates, probably as a function.
Craig,
Yeah, go ahead.
Your presentation's not stop
I know.
sharing.
I know.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Just want to make sure.
I'm just speaking to it. It's all in the report. So
Yeah.
capital fluctuates as a function of. We're still not quite there with our long-term planning, and it's ongoing, and the numbers we're not certain. So those numbers are there as placeholders. We do know that we will have to spend money on arena dehumidification, for example, which is very expensive, and that's not necessarily covered in the, although there are numbers that almost equate to that. But we have further assessments and studies of the facility to do that would inform long-term planning. We also have minimal contribution to reserve, and so requisitions not covering capital, as Joe pointed out, and also not covering for replacement of the facility is also a bit of a gap. And just with a couple of regional administrative projects that are ongoing right now behind the scenes, they've not yet landed, and they will inform future planning. And that's the highlight of the 5-year for 2020 or S226.
Thanks. I'm noting that Morrison put something in the chat. I don't have the chat. Tom, you have the chat.
Yeah.
Maybe you could report out for us, or Cheryl could report out.
Are we going to have a separate budget meeting?
Yeah, so we have something scheduled for the 11th.
Through the chair, that's if you finish it today, or we can have that special budget. That's up to commission.
So we'll see how far we get through today. Mayor Morrison, we'll see how far we land today. Is the idea there. Okay, any other questions on the budget? Go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, sorry. Because my only experience is with the city of Nelson, and I'm kind of getting familiar with that practice. I don't know what's standard, but I'm curious if we could, I don't want to make a lot of extra work, but you said that the user fees are designed to incorporate such and such, and the requisitions were designed to incorporate such and such, and clearly neither of those such and suches are planning for the future, but we're here now and we're trying to do that. I don't know what is the precedent in other local governments, so I don't want to say something that you're like, that's not how it's done. But it seems to me that when we're looking at a facility that is a community good, that not everybody uses. So let's say like schools is similar. Not everybody has kids, not everybody uses the school in that way, but everybody pays into it because everybody acknowledges that that's better for all of us, whether you use it or not. And I think that that is the purpose of recreation as well. Whether somebody actually uses the rink or not, we know that it's good for the community. The addition, so it seems to me that the requisitions would be like for maintaining that facility as status quo, and that the user fees, which is the people that are kind of invested in maintaining, like, I don't know, I'd like to see it so where we can see where the reserves are coming from specifically, and so that people know that every time they're paying that extra dollar or whatever it is, that's going so that we can one day expand the pool or whatever. And this is just a little bit too nebulous, and I agree with Director Graham that people will be like, what, 12%? I can use that building, for example, right? And so I'm wondering if there's a way to tease that out a little bit more, and this is just a big spreadsheet. This is the amount in, this is the amount out, but not everybody uses it equally. And I mean, that's the nature of government, that's the nature of hospitals, that's the nature of schools, but I just have, it feels a bit nebulous right now.
Yeah, through the chair. So in regional districts, like one of the, so just to be clear, what I said is that in the user fee, it actually contemplates
Yeah.
what that contribution should be,
Yes.
not whether it's
It is,
made or
yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So, and in this case, it isn't made. That's not first point. There is no standard way. At certain times, the way that, quite honestly, in community services right now, the only place where there is a plan is in Castlegar area IJ that I can point to and say, we have a strategy. And in fact, if you're in that meeting last night, the commission, even when the question came up, eventually all 5 members of that commission said, no, we stay with the plan. We stay with the plan. Whether, like, you know, there's questions about whether once we hit 1 million, is that enough for that capital reinvestment? Or not, we don't know. But right now, the 2029, it looks like it's a good plan. Like it looks like it's good. In this commission, we've made the exact opposite choices
In the past.
in the past. And you know, like those things are all in times and
And
but
we're
so-
contextually,
right in a different spot. So what I want to say to you, like the reason that amount, so the reason the amount that's in reserves is important is right now to, like, if the discussion is about that raw requisition number, which I think is where this commission has failed most of the time. That's the reason why we drew from reserves. You could increase that contribution from reserve to fund the capital so that the surplus funds operating and you could find a different path. But what you have to realize is that 5-year budget, so it's 3.924 this year, the path isn't to something less than 3.9 in 2026, it's to 4,041,976. And if you were to look back at your last year's budget, I pointed out 2025 taxation being 3.924249. This has been in the financial plan since last year. Pointed out that this year would be the transition. So the financial plan right now reflects that. You still have surplus funding operations. So you have 2 ways to control the budget. Redefine operations, which is opening hours, right? That service level piece, that's always a conversation. We have service, we have that, but we have that crux. Like this is why in Canada we talk about the infrastructure deficit. It's because infrastructure requires planning that's 25 years out. Councils and commissions that serve 3 years before, 5 years. So sometimes those decisions are easy to kick to the next decision-making point. So we're there right now. But you do have flexibility, and I'm not promoting, I'm just giving you your options. We could go, okay, so how can we restructure the contributions from reserves to, as rightly or wrongly, smooth the transition to a higher requisition we could do that. The one thing that we can't do in our operations is makeups, because the other choice that commission made was when the interest rate came down, it didn't choose to take that interest and put it in as a contribution to reserve. It took the interest as a savings on requisition. Right? So Kate, to your point, our problem is that we don't have that long-term piece that says, this is for this, this is for this. Castlegar is the only place we have it right. So that's where we are. So the one piece of flexibility that I have that you could give direction for us to bring back some options, but you need to give me some parameters, is increasing the contribution from reserves. But knowing that we have nothing going in, so we're playing a game for the next 5 years of the financial plan.
Okay. I've got, Cheryl's been waiting patiently. I have a note from Mayor Morrison. She would like to have an additional budget meeting, just where we can talk about this a little bit more. Sounds like there's maybe a few pieces that would like to be worked out so people can contextualize this. So I'll take that to Cheryl, and then we've got Tom.
Thank you. So through the chair, I would just like Area E is the smallest contributor to this service in the large scale because only a part of our region pays into this. But I would like the commission to understand that this service is the second highest cost for those participating residents, second only to fire. And I had a very difficult time with these residents last year on this particular service with a 5% increase in taxation. So I would strongly encourage the staff to come up with some options because I foresee incredible difficulty with Area E residents with a 12% increase in this service. So I just want you to understand I have a very large percentage of seniors in this particular area on fixed incomes, and also to just be aware of what transpired last year. And I'm sorry about the decisions that were made in the past from this commission. You know, I feel bad about it, and I feel bad that at this minute I cannot support this budget because of the reasons that I'm giving you. But maybe Area E is a little different than the city of Nelson, and typically rural incomes are typically lower than those of of urban people. So this is just the situation that I'm in, and I just wanted the commission to be able to understand it.
Just showing that map here.
Oh. Sorry, can someone read out for everyone's benefit what Janice is saying?
We all have seniors on fixed incomes.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks. Sorry, I'm sure
Thank you, Cheryl. We all have seniors on fixed incomes.
Thank you, Mayor Morrison. And I want to point out our 5-year financial plan is planning for 3% increases for 2026, 2027, more of an inflationary number after we get to that 3.9. So that's back to speaking to your adjustment period that was laid out.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kate.
It's me. So, Joe, I would like to give the direction. This feels weird for me. This might be my first time. I would like to give the direction of showing, like building some pie charts and options. And this isn't even changing the number necessarily, but showing where the requisition money goes to, operations, capital, reserves, blah, blah, and where the user fee money goes to. Operations, blah, 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 because I think that could also help folks who believe in the community good, but don't necessarily use the service to see what that looks like. And I really do love the City of Nelson model where I know that parking fees go to repair sidewalks and streets. And I can say that that is what parking fees go to. And it is kind of a user pay system. Clearly you are driving. Clearly you need roads. This makes sense to me. And I would love to be able to see that more clearly and explain it to folks who just see a 12%. And I agree, 12 feels high. Be good to know what that is per average household as well, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Just
Yeah, Joe?
I'm not very good at pie charts, but
Sarah will help.
yeah.
New job, so like,
Tom?
Yes, so a $500,000 house paid $268 last year toward the rec facility at 0.536. And it'll be a $32 increase at 12%. And of course, just to note, part of the challenge, Joe gets to see a bunch of things. We're at 0.536 per thousand. Cascar's at last year, 0.671. And Creston is at 1.22.
love Creston.
So, you know, that's, and every year all 11 of these that I've faced has been the exact same conversation, 100%. And we made different decisions as a group. And I'll only point out, and it's no disrespect or whatever, that the facility helps us bring doctors and nurses and professionals to the town. So our property values are actually increased because of this all through. So, I mean, it is an asset that helps our property values and helps us have doctors, which helps our property values and nurses and et cetera. I think that, you know, I gasped when I saw 12%, you know, even though I forgot it was 12%, and then I gasped when it is. But like, we had only gone 8% last year. If only we had done that, or if only in 17 we hadn't have used, you know, stuck with the demand for a 2% requisition increase only, and wouldn't find other ways of raising the requisition for the money we needed, we wouldn't be here. And I'm just, after 11 of these, I'm tired of just pushing it down and then facing it the next year. So I don't want a 12% increase. I don't want to pay the 12% increase. And I don't want to fall short, and then next year's 3% is 6% again, and we are saying the same thing. So anyway, that's a bit of a rant. I apologize, Chair.
You hardly ever rant. That's wonderful.
Wow. Anyway.
Apology not accepted. Any additional questions? So there very much is a desire to have an additional meeting. Is the 11th too soon, or should we be figuring out another date? We put it here to have space to have a larger budget discussion. So are we good to just bring this all back in a little less than a week?
Sorry, with direction,
Yeah.
yes. For me, the 11th, I have it on my calendar. It's not a great time for me. I have it there, I've saved it, but if it's movable, but if it's not, it's okay. Is it,
We can
everybody
handle,
else is
like,
comfortable with the 11th?
Or would you be like more for the afternoon?
I would be more for the Wednesday, because that, I kind of keep Wednesday mornings free for these things. But if it
I
doesn't
think
work,
that's where it gets hard to juggle. I could do Wednesday, could staff do Wednesday? Could Cheryl do?
No, we have water service.
Water
Okay,
services.
Tuesday it is.
Tuesday
I'll make it.
it is.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, but yeah, that's hard. So the direction though is, we want to see, let me see if I'm gonna remember this. We want to see some additional contributions to reserves as a draft.
Can I pause for a moment?
No? Go ahead.
Well, we've got half an hour, and like, I just don't know what we can, okay, anyhow.
Well, I did
No,
receive.
sorry.
I did receive
Sorry.
messages Janice just wanted to let me know that she was anticipating having a sit down about the budget, because that meeting was there, and has a preference to have that sit down dedicated to the budget.
Yeah, no, you're right.
That is all.
I am wrong.
Yeah, I'll try to reiterate the direction. Could we see with the current structure where that requisition gets divvied up into the expenses, operational, capital, et cetera, and same for user fees? And also, I'm curious, because I think you said that we're still taking from reserves to fund operational this year? Am I misunderstanding?
No, through the chair, no.
Okay, good.
Can we stop that?
Okay, I misunderstood.
Sorry, yeah, through the chair, to what the chair said, that was stopped a number of years.
Okay, I did understand that.
A small amount.
Yeah, great. And then,
So I am curious though, like, in terms of the potential to pull back on hours to help mitigate that, is that something people want to see? A change of service? I'm seeing some shaking hands. No. Okay.
So it's no decrease in service level.
Yeah, with the existing service level.
Save any money.
That's correct.
were you trying to say money? I was trying to maintain the facility.
Sorry, so
Well, a decrease in hours will reduce access, but wouldn't save any money. It'd be peanuts in the scheme of things.
Oh,
yeah, through the,
We're-
You're good. No, trying to get,
so through the chair, in the dark days, it's dark days for me because I had to implement it, but in 2007, we drastically reduced service hours. That was because the service had just opened up, and anyways, there were some issues with the way the service was controlled in its expenses, and we did reduce service hours there. Eventually, those service hours were restored once we kind of got the ship in order. So there are savings in reducing service hours. I just will point out that we also just went through reports about how well used the facility is. So if you think there's pushback you're trading one pushback for another pushback. So just to understand that. We're anticipating, and this is sometimes what happens, we anticipate a pushback from some residents on taxation. You will get that similar, if not more, pushback from people that are accessing the facility on the other hand. So those two things go hand in hand. There's not just one-sided pushback. So just to make sure that's there. So so you could have savings in decrease in service level. We can do work around that. The question is do you want us to do it? And just to be clear, I am not recommending a decrease in service level. We're at the service level that we're at. We've maintained that service level. This year is probably the first year that we will be fully for all 12 months at the service level that was I know that people want to get rid of the pre-pandemic, but that was at pre-pandemic levels.
I have no appetite for reducing services.
okay, great. So what else do we want to send for direction for Tuesday's meeting? Janice? Sorry, follow up, I am not. I can't. Tom, can you?
Yeah, I'll pull it up here. I got it and I lost it. I'm not quite sure what she meant.
Sounded like maybe she wasn't wanting to pull back service either.
Through the chair, I think the mayor is asking if we could consider what the impact would be if we reduce service levels.
On the requisition.
Correct.
So,
Okay, sorry.
I'll talk.
That'd be
Sorry.
great.
Sorry. I didn't even get to see me. So all I'm like in this discussion about reducing service hours, I'm not particularly in favor of reducing service hours. It's a discussion point that's on the table, and this is why I want to have a budget meeting. I'm sorry, Tom. Because I had a date for a budget, I didn't come with my mind wrapped around budget today, so I hadn't dived real deeply into what we were given on the agenda because I thought we was going to have a budget meeting. And so all I'm saying is, like, at the City of Nelson, we ask staff to come with, what does the budget look like with 4%? What does it look like with 10%? What does it look like with 12%? And how you get there. It's like the question that Kate's asking about. We know that when we do X, it goes to pay for Y. So all I'm saying is that we have this discussion on the table. I have no idea what the savings is if we closed at 8 versus 10 every night, because it could be peanuts. And so why would we do that when we know there's this demand? But if I don't know what the number is, I can't have the conversation. So if there's absolutely no flavor for it, that's fine. But what I was asking is just that, should we not see what scenario Q looks like on a go forward, if we're trying to figure out where we might save money? Because to me, it's just a guess, and I think that it probably isn't that hard for staff to plug in what it looks like if we reduced 2 hours a day. Like, I don't even know what would we be reducing.
So
right? These are all unknowns in the calculation. Thanks.
Would you prefer to send staff the direction of bring us what 12% is? That's what we have in front of us. What something like 10 or 8% looks like, or what something like 6 or 5% looks like?
Through the chair, those are the types of things. So, for example, we did that exercise in Creston last year. So we can definitely do that work. I just want to say it isn't easy to do. It's actually a lot of work, but we do the work. So by all means, if you were to say what,
Janice, can I get you to mute?
If you were to say what those scenarios are, we can definitely produce those scenarios.
So I think we want a lower end scenario. I don't need 2 of them, but I'd like to see what an 8% looks like. What gets lost versus 12.
We'd like to see more money in reserves.
Okay, so then do you want to see, currently at 12% with underfunding the reserves, so you'd like to see a scenario that includes additional funding to reserves, which
Correct.
is going to take to 14.
Yeah, but we need to see it needs to be like almost like a visual aid. The reason that we would go to 14, for example, is so that we would have $200,000 in reserves by the end of the year. I'm just making it up.
Understood. Yeah, I think that's the easiest scenario, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, like that's, I think Craig, Tricia, and I can do a scenario with a thought of what the proper contribution to reserve would be.
Love it.
Yes.
Thank you.
And a thought to what a savings on requisition.
Sorry, yeah, so I'm just saying that's one of the scenarios.
That's enough.
I do need to know, is it just a 12 and an 8%, which would be the 8% would, if you were to, here's a simple thing just for you. Right now, requisitions are almost fully funding operations. There's almost none of that requisition amount. Where you're getting your contribution to reserves right now is coming from the fact that our user fees and our user fees are up and our expenses were held.
Well, this year it plugged a hole in our capital budget.
Yes.
So that was going to be a hole. And then we had a great year, and now it's not.
Yeah, the previous year's budget included borrowing for this year.
Yeah. So we definitely want to protect that performance of the facility.
So is it like, so do you want that scenario to be at the 8% level? Realizing that if you say 4%, that's actually will result in a reduction in service because the increase in the increase in the debenture is greater than 4%. So I just need to make sure because I can't come back for 4.55. Like, is it like is it just 8?
Give us 8 as the low end, as the,
Okay.
and that could be a combination of spreading out from 3% to 4.25% on the subsequent years.
Okay.
And can you show us like what reserves would look like? Do over a 5-year plan?
Yes.
Because I think that's
Projected.
Yeah, projected. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I like that. I feel good about that. We have a meeting for the night for 9 a.m. We're going to run out of time here. Tom, you got one more?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Joe, can you, or Craig? So we got transfer from reserves at 4,500, 60 at foot line, 4,500, 45,000, which is 165,000 transfer from reserve. And then we have a contribution to reserves of 12,000. And I'm sorry, I've kind of lost the.
It's a good catch. It's a simple
I
explanation.
know it is, I can't remember.
So if you look up above on line 44020, there's investment income and interest. So of that 13,500 that's in that line, do we see that?
Sorry, which in the
44020.
or yeah, 13.
Of that 13,500, that 12,000 is directly related to that. And that is what finance is projecting the interest we will receive on our reserves over 2025.
Okay.
So this one, we're getting ready for next week. And I'd like to apologize to people saying, what do we need the meeting for? That was disrespectful. Sorry about that. People need it and it's obvious it's needed. So we're not making a contribution to reserve. We're making a 12,000. But what about the 165?
That's going to the ice
So that-
plant. That's
yeah.
part of that
So
$1
that-
million capital expense.
So your reserves, so the 12,000 is really, it is a projected amount of interest that we believe may be earned by the reserve. And so that it's an in-out.
Right.
It
But
has
we're
no
not
impact
adding
on-
to the reserves.
So you are decreasing reserves. this year.
Reserves.
We're
This year,
reserves.
even at 12% requisition increase
You are.
and a surplus that we brought forward from 2024. Even with that, we are still reducing our surplus, our
Reserve
reserve
balance.
by $165,000.
Correct.
For the ice plant.
Yeah. For a planned capital project for the last 5 years.
Which we were going to borrow for.
Yeah, we got it.
No, we're not borrowing. Okay, we are at,
Thanks.
we're at 11:45. I think there's enough direction to staff. We have a correspondence and we have public time. So we could go straight to public time because there's public and people expected at 11:45. Or we could see how long we spend if anybody wants to talk about the correspondence. Okay, let's go with public time. I'm hearing public time. Then we'll come back to our agenda. Is there anyone from the public who would like to share comment on our meeting today or any other issue that is not of a personal nature?
Hello, Chair. It's Bill
Yeah.
McDonnell here.
Hi, Bill.
First of all,
Welcome.
thank you. I'd like to share my gratitude to all for your open dialogue, which was stimulated by today's presentations. It provided me with a greater clarity as to the Commission's present mandate and how it may meet future recreational needs. So I just want to express that. And I know it's the last item is always a struggle each year. And and all the best with that. But I do have two quick questions, and they may be answered by email if it quickens the process. One is on the status of the school skating instruction project, which was discussed at the September meeting. And the other one, it's just a question for clarity. As part of Tia's report, under the next steps part and the arena, and it states the closure of the Pioneer Arena in Castlegar has triggered the need to redevelop the way ice programming is performed. And these new practices are transferable to other communities when established. And Nelson is mentioned. So I just need clarity. I just don't understand that statement. And the last one is just a comment about maybe your discussion on everything today. I highly recommend a book that I read, The Longevity Imperative, that discusses some of the issues and the importance of recreation on our life, and as our lives expands in years, that the author suggests, and with a lot of data, the value of early prevention rather than later intervention, especially for our health and the longevity and productivity of our lives. So, there's nothing that can be necessarily answered now, but those are the comments and questions I have. Thank you.
Katie?
Yeah, through the chair. Hi, Bill, it's Tricia. I'm not sure if you can see me or not.
Cell phone.
No, I'm on telephone.
Okay, perfect. It's just Tricia Davison, just so you know who's chatting. So I got a couple of things for you, and Craig doesn't know I'm staring at him, but he can chime in as needed. So on the school skating program, with the closure of the Civic Arena in the fall, and as a result of a bunch of staffing challenges that I'm not sure if you were able to listen to the whole meeting today, but there were a variety of things with arena staffing that were challenging in the fall, that we had to postpone the planned launch of that program. So that is still in the works, and I know the operational staff, and Craig can chime in if needed, are continuing to work on that. So I can follow up more thoroughly if you wish by email, and maybe I'll just look to Craig.
Yeah.
Sorry, go
I'd
ahead.
appreciate that.
Okay.
I appreciate an email. Thank you.
Okay, and then to your question about, if I got it correct, in relation to some work that we're doing in Castlegar related to ice and allocation of ice and dealing with making sure that the public continues to have access to ice with the closure of the Pioneer. Yes, that work is just in its initial phases, and it was through some of the allocation discussions that actually stemmed out of Nelson that we're looking at trying to figure out how we can work with groups potentially differently in order to ensure maximum use of the space by the broadest cross-section of the public. So because of the conversations from the closure of the Civic this fall, the conversation started in Nelson, but it's also now continuing in Castlegar as a result of the closure of the Pioneer that will have its last operational day on March 2nd. Did that all come through okay?
That came through. I have other questions, but that's fine. I'll leave it at that. It's been a long meeting. Thank you.
Any further public time?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say, since the letter that we addressed to both the Rec 5 Commission and City of Nelson has postponed to the next meeting, I want to point out to the Commission that the agendas for each of the meetings for 2025 were agreed upon on November 27th, and within that, a special budgetary meeting for the points that we just took 40 minutes up talking about today were reviewed and appreciated the information gratefully. However, I feel as though we are being put off as the Nelson Regional Sports Council, and I would like that to be done.
Okay.
Yes, through the chair, that's incredibly unfair to say.
No.
Number one is staff put the budget on. The reason we put the budget on this meeting is so that at that budget meeting, we had the information all all the information that commission requires. This is actually always every single year is the most work that commission needs to do. So we wouldn't be at this point for February 11th with hopefully a potential decision so that we can be, because we're already in the operating year right now. We wouldn't be at the point in February 11th to be able to make, I think for commission to be able to make a decision if they didn't have the pre-discussion beforehand.
Okay, I appreciate the context is good. Is there anything else going on with public time? Okay, yeah.
Okay, I'd like to introduce myself. First of all, my name is Andy Leafwood, and I have recently joined.
Sorry, what's the name?
Andy Leafwood.
Hey, Andy.
And I have just recently joined the Nelson Sports Council, and I've been part of the subcommittee that has been discussing the issue that we have in our letter, which is to ask that the recreation campus be reserved for recreation only. And I think that the message is going to be heard, so clearly articulated about the tremendous increase in demand for recreation facilities, which is consistent with the results of our surveys. We have 85% return or 90% return on a survey that we sent out, and of those 95% of the groups that responded said that the facilities that they have currently do not meet their needs, or have a special. So just pressing that and again introducing myself, and you'll see me at more meetings.
Great. We were wondering, Kate had wanted to have a coffee with you, and we were trying to figure out the name. So now,
Because you had asked at one of the like open houses about bias, I was like, I gotta talk to that guy.
yeah. So that's good. Thank you. So that moves us on to correspondence. Now that we are completed with our public time, commission. Does anybody want to bring up the points raised by the Nelson Sports Council in their letter for discussion? Go ahead, Kate.
Can that be forwarded to the consultant as part of the collecting of? Yeah, great.
And you guys, clarity for me, Dave, you guys completed a group survey as well as the Regional Sports Council?
That's correct.
On top of promoting it? Great, so that we'll receive that feedback. This letter will also be incorporated, or at least Rob will have seen it. We'll see it. Okay.
When we get to present the delegates, it'll be in the PowerPoint that we're giving to you. We
Sure.
haven't been
At City Council.
approved as far as Rec 5 is concerned.
Yeah.
We were hoping it was going to be today, but we would love the opportunity to make a presentation on the 11th prior to the budgetary discussion.
No. I'm just going to say that, and I said this over email, right? The delegations that we have, Commission gave direction a couple years ago to bring clubs forward to give us updates on what's going on with their clubs. The budget, to have a delegation on a budget item, we have the public time now, we have the input. You guys will, I think, no doubt be participating in that budget meeting as a public meeting as well. But I don't think it's appropriate to have a group come forward on a specific delegation on a specific ask within the budget, as opposed to this commission agreeing to take on a project or go through a feasibility. Like if we had a letter to do a feasibility study, we would consider that in a work plan. It would show up in a budget process, but the budget meeting would be for us to discuss the various scenarios, not to be pitched, for lack of a better term. And I don't really know a better way to say that, but I don't think it would be appropriate. If someone thinks otherwise, let me know. Cheryl, do you want to comment on the correspondence?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I just had a question on the correspondence, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's why it's here. That's why it's on the
Okay,
agenda.
thank you. Okay, so my question is like this is written on behalf of the collective sports groups and recreational organizations of Nelson. Like, how many people does that represent?
Thousands.
Do we know?
Yes.
Well, yeah, through the chair, it sounds like thousands are represented. And my question, so when you did a group survey?
That's correct.
And the group survey informed the language of this letter?
Correct.
And then this language was sent back to those groups for sanction.
It was sent to them prior to it being presented to you.
So thousands of people have seen this letter and signed off on it as a petition or?
Through the user groups, yes.
Okay. I have talked to a few organizations that are on this list who had no awareness of this letter. And so I would wonder how much the letter is been run past the groups. So I think we just have to take it with, you know, there's a direction from the Regional Sports Council, but it isn't necessarily something that everyone signed up on.
Interesting take on it. So you're saying what we're putting forward is not factual?
I would say there are challenges on whether all these groups have signed off on this letter.
We got proof that they okayed the letter.
Sure. I'm just saying I have talked to a number of chairs of these groups and had to send the letter to a few of them.
We're aware.
Yeah, of course. So let's just, with a grain of salt, understand where the letter comes from.
Okay.
Okay.
I do have a
Go ahead,
comment. I think, you know, and I've talked a number of times, we've looked at our procedures bylaw. And one of my contributions to the conversation has been that our public time comes after the meeting, as opposed to before the meeting, where you could inform us of your opinion on topics that are on the agenda, and different councils and in different forms of meeting allow the public different inputs. And so in an ideal world, maybe it's not really a delegation, it's just, you know, what do you think of the budget, the 12% type of thing? We're kind of going on what we hear from our people and the citizenry and last year's budget. So that's my comment on a delegation at a budget meeting. It's just a person saying, this is what I think about the budget, or 12%. But what we get at our budget meetings that are held are concerns at the gross level of taxation generally, as opposed to, and it's no disrespect to anyone intended, but as opposed to what the impacts would be with us not providing services. So it's an interesting question, but I'm not disagreeing with the chair and his sense of what our budget meeting is. It's a public meeting. We want people to hear our conversations and the discussions we have and the decisions we have to make. You want to email me your thoughts of what should be added to the budget? I'll be happy to, look at it and consider it, or taken out of the budget. But as you look at this budget, the only thing that can be taken out is just less hours. There's nothing else to cut out of it. We have to put the ice plant in. We have to do the capital improvements. We have to add to the reserve, even though we're taking away from the reserve, and we have to pay our debts. So I don't know. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, fair enough.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for your input, public and groups, and Andy, great that you're a part of the group, and we all were at the public hearings, and we do see the amazing, like what I learned at the public hearing at the Prestige, and you spoke and what have you. Here I am rambling on past time. What I learned is that the tax dollars that we collect for Rec 5 and others has provided an opportunity for, or helped facilitate community by the massive thousands of people that are represented in the CC of your letter. So tax dollars really help build community because they help facilitate these volunteers coming together to help our youth and our seniors and our adults participate. And as Bill said, live a healthy lifestyle, a rich and healthy lifestyle. So it's tricky when you see the numbers for us to envision how do we borrow another 10 or 15 million dollars to build a facility when we feel like our rec budget, as Director Graham said, it's the biggest tax item in some people's tax bill. In Area F, it's the fire, it's the garbage, and it's the rec facility. Take up close to 40% of your RDCK budget is about 52% of your tax budget. In the rural areas, 55%. 10% of it is for the fire departments, and then the other 40% is divided by things. But this bill, as I pointed out, that $250 on a $500,000 house is just the community complex, keeping the pool and the rink. Basically, the pool and the rink going, $40,000 for some more equipment and what have you is peanuts compared to the pool and the rink. So anyway, I really appreciate people here adding to the conversation of helping us, really make these decisions and see where people's priorities are within our community.
We're here to collaborate and support the Rec 5, the City of Nelson, the Regional District, and all of the communities that we live in. And if it assists the chair, perhaps with showing support from the user groups that you're in question of. Would that speak volumes for you, sir?
Excuse me, rephrase it.
Would you find value in seeing the numbers that we represent?
Show up to the budget meeting?
Show up.
Yeah, we would love people to come to our meetings. Yeah.
May I just, we gotta go.
We gotta go.
But I would just add that one of the things that I hear is that a number of the user groups that are CC'd here don't receive the benefit of any tax dollars. And so we do hear, well, the hockey and the swimmers, they get tax dollars, but the volleyballers don't. So it's part of the overall challenge that we're all looking at. And I've been looking at for 11 years and talking to Bill. Bill's been great help in advocating for the importance of this, is trying to find that balance when some years we've shown we haven't even fully funded this part of the recreation and fallen behind the 8 ball. So it's just that ongoing. I hate to say it's money. We all have high goals, but at the end of the day, the money is really has proven to be a real challenge for us. And I'll just add, Joe and I know this. It was a miracle when we got the pool renovation. We were in 5 million or 10 million, and we were just about to have to go and borrow another 2 million to finish the pool project. We were tapped out, we were done, and we got a miracle grant at the last second of 1.5 million or whatever to help us end up coming out of that process with money in the bank. And then we made a decision to not raise taxes because we had raised them, and that ended up using some of that surplus or reserve, if you will. So we've been lucky. It's a balancing act, and I just don't want to fall behind the 8 ball again because it was high stress. Anyway, I've gone on long enough. I'm sorry. For those that want me to shut up, I'm sorry.
You're great.
I will.
Thank you for shutting up. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. And any objections? The meeting is concluded. Thanks everybody for coming today. We will see you again.